from our next speaker, who is also from Sanofi Pasteur, and indeed from a campus before that. It's Dr. Patricia Londono-Hayes. She's the head of, Senior Director of Head of R&D Initiatives at Sanofi Pasteur. She's going to present to us on the iProve roadmap. That was a 7th framework program funded by the European Commission. Patricia, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Cormac, and good morning, everybody. You're about to see a slide on the screen here. I'm indeed extremely happy to be here today to be able to present to you the iProve roadmap. So I'm here today on behalf of Vaccine Europe and the iProve project team. So if we could have the next slide, please. So what is the iProve roadmap? The roadmap is a map that the vaccine community built to indicate what are the areas of technology and innovation that need to be fostered, and more importantly, funding in Europe in order for us to sustain the vaccine research and development in the region in the short and medium-term future. The roadmap is primarily intended for funding bodies and for decision makers. It is actually the voice of the vaccine community telling decision makers where the investment should be. More importantly, it would like to promote a strategic view of investment, saying how to look in a holistic way at the pan-European region and to avoid fragmentation in funding in Europe. And this, if you like, is extremely important because it's imperative that Europe maintains its leadership in the vaccine sector worldwide. So how was the roadmap built? And this is a very interesting aspect of it. The roadmap was built through a very extensive and inclusive consultation process. There were more than 130 contributors coming from all sectors and areas of vaccine R&D. We have areas that you can see in the screen there that go all the way from research and development to vaccine manufacture. They touch on infrastructure, small, medium-sized enterprises, therapeutic and prophylactic vaccines, and finally training and the question of vaccination hesitancy and vaccine acceptance. The result of this exercise is 80 different recommendations, very specific and punctual on what needs to be done, where the money should be invested. We are very close to launch, so don't worry, I won't go through the 80 recommendations, but I would like to highlight that there are some very common threads that come through the whole of the roadmap. One very important is that we need to focus on multidisciplinary research in order to really promote innovation. And some examples is that if we want to improve the way that we design vaccines, we have to bring together biologists and bioinformaticians. We need to ensure a closer dialogue between engineers and scientists in order to innovate on the manufacturing floor as well. If we need to tackle this question, this issue of vaccination hesitancy in Europe, we need to understand why is it happening. And for this, you need to bring into the exercise people from the behavioral sciences field, from marketing, from communications. The second theme that comes across is that the translation of scientific innovation into technology on the ground needs to be accelerated. And here again, we go back to the area of vaccine manufacturing, where engineering and science innovation has to be brought to the actual floor to kind of make vaccine manufacturing more effective. But it doesn't stop there. The quality control of our vaccines also needs some innovation. We need to bring 21st century technology to the release tests that we use for our vaccines. We want those tests to be much more consistent and less reliable on in vivo animal experimentation. And we cannot forget clinical trial design. We need to be innovative in the way we design our clinical trials. And here we are talking about using approaches like the adaptive approach. And we are also talking about improving the way we aggregate data from those trials, we harmonize the data, and so we can create big data sets that can be interrogated and get us more and more information. And the third theme that comes across is this that many people have mentioned today, the collaboration aspect. And here we want to emphasize collaboration across the actors in the European ecosystem space. And the first point that came across there is about the infrastructure. It's important that we have a common vision of the infrastructure for vaccine R&D in the whole of Europe, and that we leverage each other to make it, to make the strategic investment and make it more useful and effective for the whole community. For people in the biotechnology sector, and more particularly in the area of therapeutic vaccines, it's important that there is more sharing of experiences and lessons learned. And there the message was very clear. It's not important only to share successes, but also failures, the reasons for failure. So there's an invitation for the biotech sector to do that. There is another invitation for the large pharmaceutical companies to have stronger links and offer more support to the small and medium-sized enterprises to create a very vibrant SME sector in the region. And finally, in terms of collaboration, we have to think about the future of our future scientists. So it's important that we have a strategic plan for how we're going to train the people and the brains that we need for a sustainable future in the area. So here, the call is for a collaboration between industry and higher institutions to try to create programs and incentives for training in vaccine and vaccinology. So with that, I want to invite you all to read the map, use it, take it as a starting point for future discussion on how this is the funding can be given in the appropriate areas. It's an invitation not only, of course, for funding bodies and from decision makers, but from all of you, the vaccination community, to accept it, embrace it, and take it as a start point. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Patricia. Was civil society involved in the consultation?
The consultation had a lot of parties that included people on the ground working on vaccination, and European bodies and worldwide bodies like the WHO. So definitely people that is involved in using vaccines and in giving vaccination.
Yeah, okay. And this is a question that maybe each of you might have thoughts on. How does a kind of very complex roadmap, and I've looked at a slightly broader version of that document that drills down even further, and it's very, very complex. And how can you take that sort of top-down approach and combine it with sort of bottom-up initiatives to work, say, just on an individual product program, a development program? How do those two things meet? I mean, if you're not within the sort of correct framework, does that mean your product or your program is kind of in some way invalid or not fitting the European strategy? Like, how does industry respond to that roadmap that you've set out, I suppose?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. In fact, the approach itself wanted to go away from addressing specific products or specific diseases. So the idea was to cover areas, to create the framework that in theory facilitates the R&D for vaccines on any disease.
It's a sort of an ecosystem kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could make an additional comment. I think the value, and I really encourage those who have not read the report and to spend some time, because I think it's very comprehensive. You saw from the slides there are more than 130 people that have contributed. And I think it's a framework, it's a roadmap. We know that we are not going to change the world overnight, and even if we try to change it overnight, probably it's a recipe for failure. So I think it was through, incremental changes, but that, and with each of them that are consistent with the roadmap, that we will be able to move further much faster.
Okay. And did anything unexpected come out of the consultation? Any surprises?
I think for me personally, there was a surprise. I come from a generation where we always promote the dialogue between biology and say, bioinformatics, computer scientists. But today, the request goes well beyond that. It's to have a person, individuals trained in all those disciplines. So you don't have to translate. They actually can speak both languages or 3 languages at the same time.
Yeah. So that's the kind of person you want now.
That's the kind of person we want, and that's the kind of training that we need to offer in higher institutions. Yeah.